There we go. Thank you. I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:05 p.m. We'll take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Here.
Mr. Rollins? Here. Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch? Here. Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Mr. Escobedo? With 6 present, 1 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank our Jefferson High School graduate, Rod Weddle, Rod Weddle, as our cameraman tonight, and I understand Channel 20, again, on Comcast is having issues with the broadcast, so it is available live streaming, and hopefully they'll have it fixed soon. So at this time, we'll recognize and celebrate outstanding contributions of our students and staff. Mr. Earl Dotson Jr., you have the floor, sir. All right.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, board members. The Illinois State Board of Education annually sponsors those who excel to honor individuals who have made significant contributions to the state's public and non-public elementary and secondary schools. Local school district leaders and members of school communities nominate candidates. This year, Rockford Public Schools has 2 staff members who receive state-level recognition. Carlson Elementary School's Christy Larson is recognized with the Award of Merit for Student Support Personnel. East High School's Morgan Teskey is recognized with the Award of Excellence for Classroom Teachers. Mr. Teskey is also a finalist for the 2017 Teacher of the Year Award. Yeah. He'll be recognized at a banquet this weekend. That's also when we'll find out who is the 2017 Illinois Teacher of the Year. Good luck, Mr. Teskey. Congratulations again to Ms. Larson and Mr. Teskey, and thank you both for your service to Rockford Public Schools and its students. Please join me in congratulating them and give them a round of applause.
She has a cold. Congratulations.
Got enough
Very
with your day
proud.
job, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. I'll see you on Saturday.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, okay.
I'd also like to just recognize Prince Carlson's principal, David Nold is also here supporting. So Mr. Nold. 4 Auburn High School students are semifinalists for the 2018 National Merit Scholarship. Andrew Baxter, Ellen Chidley, Logan Power, and William Snedeker are among approximately 16,000 semifinalists across the country for scholarships in the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Program. All 4 students are seniors in the Gifted Academy at Auburn. These academically talented high school seniors have the opportunity to continue in the competition for approximately 7,500 National Merit Scholarships worth more than $32 million. The National Merit Scholarship Program honors students who show exceptional academic ability and potential for success in rigorous college studies. The nationwide pool of semifinalists represents less than 1% of high school seniors in the United States. Congratulations to these students on this prestigious honor, and good luck in the rest of the process. And thank you to their parents, teachers, friends, and family for supporting these students and their achievements. And they are here this evening, so let's please join me in giving them a round of applause.
Oh, Channel 20 is now working. All right, good. Congratulations. She has a cold. So she's, congratulations.
Yeah, right. Congratulations.
Well done. Very
So you know where you're going yet?
Congratulations. Congratulations.
How about you?
Congratulations.
And you? Where, do you know where you're going yet?
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Great.
This is for Mrs. McCullough, who always reminds me, a special round of applause again for the parents, please. The parents are here as they leave. Bruce's parents. Thank you, sir. That is all.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for all your hard work. Okay, we'll move on now to our petitions and communication portion of our meeting, when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it's appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow for sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meetings in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes. To address the board. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. I will call 2 names. If the second person will come to the front, then we can maximize the time. You have a clock on the wall over here to help you with your time. We thank you for your interest and for your cooperation with our guidelines. And I have been told the Channel 20 broadcast is now working. So, okay, so our first speaker tonight is Ricky Naylor, to be followed by Nancy Godowski.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, I just want to kind of kind of remind this board that, we had another meeting this weekend. I want you guys to know that you're not going to be remembered for what you tried to do. You're going to be remembered and congratulated on what you actually accomplished. Now, this thing about leadership is that you, not the board, but this administration here, you cannot lead with what doesn't work. That's what the whole problem is. You've been doing a lot of things that are not working, so therefore, that is not leadership. Leadership is when you leading in something that's actually working. I mean, one of the founding fathers of modern education, public education, Horace Mann, once said that, you just can't just do something and say, let's see what happens. That's what you guys are doing. I mean, at that last meeting, it seemed like, this administration had a plan, but it's just like, okay, let's roll this out. Then you roll it out there now, and you found out that, wait a minute, it's not going to work in certain schools. So therefore, there was really no real plan. A real plan would be like, okay, we're going to do this to make the right things happen. We got to get to that point right there. And you're not ready. So far, people are not ready to get to that point yet. But the main thrust of this whole thing is that we cannot allow another generation to fail because of complacency, incompetence, bias, perception of other people. So over the weekend, we sit down, me and my little group sit down. We took that last meeting, we put it up on the big screen off of YouTube, and we took all those things that were said at that last meeting by some of these board members, and we got a plan in place to help these West Side schools. But we just can't just come and do stuff. You guys got to want to sit down with us and say, okay, what do you guys got? And then we'll talk about it.
Thank you. Nancy Godowski, to be followed by Reverend Derek Shelby.
Okay, this is a continuation of the sad saga of Aramark. I am sorry to say things have not improved. Urine smells are now permeating the hallways. Floors are not being swept or vacuumed. The third shift is not doing their jobs. The day shift is continuing to have added work loaded upon their shoulders, but they can only do so much. Toilet paper is a real rarity. It would be nice to have. People are bringing their own toilet paper to school. This board has been put in a very awkward position due to the information administration has been giving you. You are actually right now between a rock and a hard place. It is my understanding there is still not a signed contract with this company, so why are they still here? They have already demonstrated they are incapable of professionally cleaning our district schools. But the other question is, who can you hire now? Our schools are unhealthy for our precious students and staff. They are becoming health code violators. The county jail is cleaner than our schools. Some of our students have feeding tubes and ports and catheters. How unsanitary. If you smell urine here in the hallway, wouldn't you feel disgusted that a place of business is so unkept and unclean? Well, think about what the students and staff have to endure every day in a building of education, which is now looking like a third world condition. Please, board members, help these students. Take charge. And by the way, people have told me now mice are running rampant, ants, and little chunks of food in the bathrooms that haven't been cleaned, and ants are now starting with anthills. So I don't understand why the health department hasn't been out here, but we need to keep our schools clean and sanitary, or either that or you're going to have an epidemic going on around here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Reverend Derek Shelby.
St. Luke chapter 16. And it came to pass that the beggar died, Jesus talking, and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torments. And the rich man died, and in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torments. We had that meeting over there at the school with the editor, Mark Baldwin. Now listen, Mr. Sturgis came, Mr. Davis came, another person was sitting over in the corner like he was Judas. He came. But the leader of the school district didn't come. We had the meeting about desegregation, about segregating the schools again, about race, how they raping black kids, and the leader of the school district don't come. Karina was there. Now, somebody tell me, explain to me, how can you be a leader and don't care about the concerns of certain people, and you're kicking out more black males than anybody else? Explain that to me. And he don't show up. Don't show up. The next day, the headline of the Rockford Register Star should have been, "Superintendent should be fired." We have the meeting. We have some of the board members show up. Chairman Haney showed up. They had probably 25 to 50 educated people. I'm talking about master's degrees, doctor's degrees, and bachelor's degrees in education. And they all got up almost to a person and said, Rockford School District is raping black kids. Thank the Lord Jesus for his blood.
Thank you. Are there any board member comments at this time? Okay. We are now at the consent portion of our agenda, including the following items: the meeting minutes of October 10th, 2017, payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, contracts under $10,000, construction bid request log, and travel, and 3 bid recommendations, one for Roosevelt Community Education Center's new gym floor, the electronic message board at 5 schools, which was a rebid, and the administrative building main boardroom table rebid. The recurring contracts for certified special education teacher through Cumberland Staffing, Edmentum Study Island, the first addendum to the service agreement for Ed Blocks, Elevate K-12, the Unite Private Networks addendum, and the other consent items, including the monthly investment reports through September 2017, the interest transfer from July 1st through September 30th for 2017, the substitute bonus, the Freedom of Information log, and the financial results year-to-date through through September 30th, 2017. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Dixon. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Siegel.
9D.
9D. Ms. McCullough.
8B and 8C.
8B and 8C. Okay, then I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the items not pulled from the consent.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. I'll now take a motion and a second to approve item 8B, which is the electronic message board at 5 schools.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Is there discussion or questions?
Mr. Schmidt? And I did call Mr. Schmidt ahead of time, and I'm just going to follow up with my question, and that was, I know that quite often schools, their PTOs, or, for example, the one I gave him was West Middle School has a Friends of West. There's groups that organize fundraisers, and that's happened for quite a few schools in our district. Maybe not to pay for the whole sign, but certainly to put money toward a sign. And so you were going to follow up and find out if anybody had been reached out to in any of the schools to see if they would participate.
Yes, we'll reach out. Since we spoke today with West, we'll call out to the Friends of West and see if the PTOs or any other organization would like to donate to this. We'll also reach out to the other schools if there's a PTO that would like to donate with that. A lot of times the PTOs will donate, they'll put their plaque and their sign out there. So we will reach out to these schools.
And the alternates on all these?
The alternate on there was to run a third conduit cable or another conduit cable. In the base bid on this, there's 2 conduits going out there, one for power and one for the data going in there. It's running the fiber through the data, because right now it's going to be a wireless connection from the building to the sign. Those alternates were to actually pull the fiber and connect the fiber on there. So the conduit's already going to be there. So we decided not to go with the alternate to pull that fiber out there, because we're going to go with the wireless, see how that works. If it doesn't work out, then we can run the fiber in the conduit that's part of the base bid.
So none of these alternates are applicable then,
Correct.
correct? Just for edification, a learning curve for me, I don't know if anybody else is interested, but is it distance? Is that why there's such a huge difference in the alternates on those?
Yeah, because these are
12,000 to 1,200.
Underground conduit,
16.
and they're actually pulling the wire, so it's going to be the wire feed from the building to the sign. So based on the distance, it's going to increase the cost.
Okay. Well, and I support, us having good signage at our schools. I think it's great for families, and we can be current. But I do know that there's people, and having been with my children in schools and raising money for these signs, that people liked a visual representation of what their fundraising has brought forward. So, thank you.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Any other discussion? Now I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 8B, the electronic message boards.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
I now take a motion for item 8C, which is the administrative building main boardroom table rebid.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Connor? Is there a second?
Mr. Rollins?
Mr. Rollins, okay. Discussion, Ms. McCullough?
Remember I said I had another question? I
Okay.
couldn't remember when we were on the phone. This was it.
Okay.
Why did we have to rebid this?
We went out there, we didn't get any responders or anybody show up at the pre-bid, if I'm not mistaken. So we sat there and reevaluated it and sent it out for a rebid.
Oh, I thought it said there were 3. Okay. All right, and just this money will come out of the administration building fund? It comes out of the
Yes.
money that we receive is it called rental lease, whatever, the money that we get from the bank
Correct.
for
It's out of
using this
Fund
building,
24.
we put that in a special fund, and that's to do upgrades within this building.
You are correct.
So it's not coming out of any educational funds. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Now I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 8C, the administrative building main boardroom table.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes as 6 yeses, 1 absent.
I'll now take a motion and a second for the recurring contract item 9D, which is the Unite Private Networks.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dixon. Questions or discussion? Mr. Siegel.
Is the $37,176 the discounted rate or just the contract rate from which we will receive the 90% discount through E-rate?
The answer is coming down the aisle.
There you
Okay, okay.
The 37,000 is the non-discounted rate.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 9D, the Unite Private Networks.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes as 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Okay, we are now on to the closed session consent agenda items, including the following: the appointment of Linda Coffran as the 12-month Executive Director of Budgeting, the appointment of Douglas Mitchell as a 10-month high school assistant principal, the HR organizational report and addendum, and the closed session consent items for student discipline. Unless otherwise modified below, the board adopts and accepts the hearing officer's findings and recommendations in the following cases in which students expelled or suspended are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal. Students 4108, 4113, and 4114 are expelled for the remainder of this school year. Student 4109, 4110, 4111, 4112, 411, and 4115 are expelled for the remainder of this school year through the first semester of next school year. And the expulsion for student 2020 is held in abeyance, contingent upon an EIA agreement for the remainder of this school year and the first semester of next school year. And the 4-day suspension for student 5004 is affirmed. And the following students have received EIAs: 1009, 3337, 3342, 3343, 3344, 3345, 3346, 3347, 3348, 3349, 3350, 3351, 3353, 3354, 3355, 3357, and 3358. Is there a motion and a second to approve these closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Dixon. Are there any items that board members would like to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
The motion passes as 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our next item on the agenda, which is our superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Mr. Scrivano. Once again, want to extend my congratulations to our honorees tonight and reinforce the accomplishment that that is being a National Merit semifinalist. These students deserve our admiration and our recognition. The families, the faculty and staff that all contributed to that. That's a really big accomplishment, and I was honored to have the opportunity to recognize them this evening, and certainly a lot of other exciting academic achievements that are happening in our buildings. Also looking forward to heading to Bloomington on Saturday to root for Morgan Teskey as he competes as one of 10 finalists for the State Teacher of the Year Award. I know he's a very worthy of that recognition, as are, I'm sure, all the other teachers he's competing against, and we're going to be there with a good contingent from Rockford to root him on. Thank you.
We'll move now on to our committee reports. Ms. McCulloch, the Education Committee report.
So the Education Committee met last Tuesday in this room. We had 2 topics on our agenda. One of them was a presentation about our student athletes, some of the things we were told, and I'm still waiting for numbers on all of them. We have that our student athletes have higher GPAs, and we were actually given we were given the numbers on that one, and on average, in 2016, the student athletes' GPA was 2.37, and the non-student athletes was 1.73. So there's a pretty, the green are the student athletes, and the white are the non, and they're all taller. We were also told that they take more advanced placement courses, and we will be getting a follow-up on what kind of numbers those are. Attendance rates were higher, and behaviors in regard to number of referrals were better, meaning they had less referrals. Our student athletes, the goal for 2020, this is one of our goals that is in our strategic plan, was to have 51% of our students involved in athletics, and in 2017 they reached 52%. So they already beat that goal, and now they've increased it to 62% by 2020. So they give us a whole list of firsts with our all the teams that we have, the things that are happening, and if anybody wants to see the full presentation, feel free to go on to Board Docs under Education Committee, and the full report is there. Our other report was from the Student Service and Alternative Learning, and some of the focus on that was, and I thought this, I'm just going to share one piece. Again, it's on school climate. The goals are, if you have good climate, it helps to lead achievement. But the state, there were a couple pieces from 105 ALC. So the state code said, in most schools, although the disruptive students who are the primary cause of inappropriate educational environments comprise a small percentage of the local student body, they nevertheless consume a substantial amount of the time and resources of teachers and school administrators. And we as board members have seen that, quite often as the discipline cases come across. The other part of that code, letter E, that was D, E said, and this is 5/13A1, says disruptive students, which is a student eligible for suspension or expulsion through the discipline process established by the school district, typically derive little benefit from traditional school programs. And one of the things that we have going for us in our district is that we do have alternative programs. I know that there's new names that we're supposed to be using, but we have Roosevelt, and the principal for Roosevelt, I gave you a report from him last time, but he was there again to talk about he's doubled the number of credit hours last year from like 2,000 to 4,000, and the number of graduates went from 150 to 229, I think it was, something like that, but it's a huge increase. So that program's working. We also have our ombudsman program at ILC. That program is working. We had that principal there as well. So we have some alternatives for our students who aren't learning the traditional environment. We talked a little bit about the bully model, talked about some restorative justice that's happening in the different schools. We reviewed some of the trends of incidents. It's called incidents, but it's referrals is what a lot of people would know. And the number of referrals have dropped since in the chart that we were given since 2011. There's been a trend downward, and I don't have exact numbers to show you, but the trend is in the right direction. We also were given some statistics on tardies, and the number of tardies has dropped like 9%. And one of the great things that we have going with some of our schools, Lewis Lemon, I think, and Ellis have the walking school bus. and they saw a great, large drop in tardies with students there because the hardest thing was to get them there for the first hour of the day. There was additional information, there are all kinds of charts. So I just encourage you to go ahead and take a look again. One of the great ones is the decrease, 59% decrease from 2009 to 2016 on the number of students who were excluded from school, who had an out-of-school suspension, 59%. I'll leave you with that one. We meet again next month. We're always the third Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. in this room. One of the items that we will be talking about is the innovative schools. We have a pilot going on in 2 of our schools, and they're going to bring forward their plans so that we have a better understanding, and board members might be interested in, a better understanding of what they're doing to change the school day to hopefully bolster achievement. Thank you. Oh, we knew you were going to do that. Give me a second and I'll look it up. It's the third Tuesday. Anybody got a calendar open? I don't.
Third Tuesday of November?
Please.
21st.
Thank you. It's the 21st of November. And you obviously don't have to be present, barring Channel 20 not operating. It is televised on Channel 20.
Thank you.
And the innovative school pieces are already were put out, the plans in the board member, or in the committee members. So if you go online and look up the October 17th packet, and the information is already there. So you have lots of time to digest it. Yes, Mr. C.
Could you repeat the statistic on the number of exclusions dropped from, and from when to this last year?
It's this one, right? Yeah. So this is page 30 of the presentation. In from 2009 to 2016, so last year, it dropped 59%. So 18,690 to 7,680 for ISBE, and ours is
5626.
5626 to 3513.
Nice, thank you.
Very good.
So, yes, Mr.
Impressive.
Yeah, definitely is a strong move in the right direction. Thank you.
Mr.
Well,
Rollins?
and we've yeah, okay.
Mr. Rollins?
Not really a question, but something, when you were talking about the alternative programs, it triggered something. I don't know how many of you get the Chicago Tribune, but on the front page of the Tribune last Sunday, a week ago Sunday, was a Rockford story about a girl who succeeded in one of our alternative programs. It's a pretty neat story. So if you haven't read that, and I don't know, Mrs. Height Carter, she might have been one of your students. I don't know. When were you principal there?
Sure.
Sure.
You know the story? Okay, all right, okay.
I was a principal at Roosevelt from 2004 to 2012.
I'm pretty sure she probably was one of your students. So you should check out, I think it was a week ago Sunday in the Trib, and I think I've already recycled the paper or I'd bring it in, but look online.
Okay.
It was a front page story.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. McCulloch, as well.
Well, and I just want to clarify for you, as Dr. Jarrett and I are looking at this, I'm not sure if your question was the number of incidents or the number of students that were excluded, because I'll give you both, because I did give you both, but I didn't really state it well. So the number of students who had out-of-school suspension in 2009 was 5,626. The number of students who had out-of-school suspensions in 2016 was 3,513. Now, the number of incidents, because we know that some students have more than one, but the number of incidents was 18,690. So that's the number of referrals that we would have had in 2009. And in 2016, it was 7,680. And I know, I hesitate because we don't like to talk about arrests, but the reality is our students get arrested. And we were given historical data, a 10-year trend on that, and it started from 2008 when there were 1,098 arrests of our students. In 2016, it was 239.
It's about 80%.
So, all the right direction.
Mr. Rollins, Finance Committee report.
The Finance Committee has not met since our last board meeting, and we will meet on the first Monday of November, which is November 6th at 5:30 PM here in this room.
Thank you. Mr. Connor, Operations.
Operations has not met. Our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, November 7th at 6:30 in this room.
Okay, we are now on to our action items. The first action item is the Don Johnston subscription for Snap and Read. Ms. Lawrence presented this. Is there a motion and a second to approve this?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Mr.
Second.
Siegel. All right. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none on the court, and then call the roll on the approval of action item 16A.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Second item is the News to You proposal that was submitted by Mrs. Lawrence. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? The coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 16B.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Our next item is the real estate purchase at 523 Union Street that Mr. Schmidt presented. Is there a motion and a second to approve this purchase?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, on the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 16C.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. Our next item is the third-party vending nutritional services that was presented by Ms. Beauchamp. Is there a motion and a second to approve this?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? I was going to bring Mr. Connor a box of Pop-Tarts tonight, so.
I was going to say,
Okay. But
that
then
was going to be, my comment was going to be, what is the word of the day?
Okay.
Everybody, it's
Never mind.
Pop-Tarts. Okay.
Have the coordinator then call the roll.
In case anybody's wondering, it's because we do still serve Pop-Tarts, yes.
All right, okay. 16D, we'll call the roll on.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Our final item, action item then, is the contract for professional development with Richard Jenkins. Is there a motion, a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, have the coordinator will then call a roll on the approval of item 16E.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
We are now on to new business, and administration is requesting the board suspend the rules to approve this addendum for purposes of Mr. Stromquist continuing as accounting assistance with the Financial Services Department. So first, I need a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Questions or discussion? Call the roll on that first, correct? All right.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Okay, now I need a motion and a second to approve the addendum to the consulting agreement.
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Connor, second by Mr. Dixon. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 17A.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Okay. We are now on to our final four items under other and new business. Mr. Schmidt, you have the podium, sir. I drove by there the other day. It looks really good.
It looks really good. One of the houses actually caught on fire. The 528 Union, that was one of
I
the...
saw that, yeah.
Yes and no,
Don't comment on that.
Working it out with the fire department. So, actually, the contractor that they use is also the contractor we had out there doing the demos too, so.
It was on fire on purpose by the fire department?
No.
Were they
It caught fire,
practicing?
so the fire department calls them in there, so they automatically, at that time, have to tear the building down, at least down into the basement level.
It was abandoned, that building.
Yeah, it was abandoned.
Oh.
Yeah,
It was a fire.
It was
Yeah,
one
but
that
there's a
was-
lot of places that let the fire department practice on
Yes.
abandoned
yes,
old
yes.
homes.
Real estate items, B, C, D, and E. With B and C, those are on Kishwaukee Street. Those two parcels are actually owned together. This will complete two more parcels after these that we have to purchase out there for housing residentials. So these are the ones right there just to the northeast of the property. These are part of the building expansion out there. With, I'm going to skip around a little bit, with the eminent domain, item E, that's on South 3rd Street. We're unable to reach an agreement with the individual out there, so we recommend through our outside consultant that we bring this forward to eminent domain. And the last item in there, which is the biggest one, is Haas Towing. We finally reached an agreement with them for the sale of the property and the relocation expenses with the contract in there. Once we pay them, they'll be out of there by the end of December, which puts us right on schedule where we need for the construction of the new school at Kishwaukee.
Since I asked this question before the meeting, could you just go through the process of how, the legal process of how the agreement for relocation happens?
Well, with this, me and Mr. Lester met with Haas Towing quite a while ago, over a year ago. When you start with the process, we did an estimate value of the property and just did an estimate of the relocation. Once we went in there and started talking with the owners, looking at the relocation, visiting the inside of the property, seeing where they could go, working with Mark Rose, who is our consultant that we've hired with this, Haas Towing found another location out there. Once they found a location, which is over on Harrison and 20th Street, just north of Harrison, west of 20th Street, they had to kind of stay in the area where they needed for their towing business that they have for the city of Rockford and things like that. Once we found the spot, we went out there. Mark Rose met with them, talked about the relocation, looked at the needs that they currently had in their building and the needs that they would have to build out in the new building. And everything that they build out in that new building has to be per code. They got the estimates out there. It was a pretty good stack. They got multiple quotes on everything. They submitted that. Mark Rose looked at it. Legal team at Henshaw with Mr. Lester and some of his staff sifted through everything, what's allowable, what's not allowable, if there's multiple quotes. On there, what were the lows, make sure they weren't duplicating everything, make sure that everything that they submitted was part of the Relocation Act that was actually authorized under this. So based off of that, Mr. Lester went back and continued to negotiate with their attorney at Haas Towing, and it was basically a negotiation technique that Mr. Lester did to get the price where we're at right now.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for any of the others? Ms. McCulloch?
7. Yeah, you went through this with me before, but I just thought it would be, just for edification. So we had budgeted, I was driving when you gave that to me. We had budgeted what to buy the property?
When we started to look at this based in 2013 and 14, when we looked at all the property of the different areas, we estimated it was based off the fair market value off the current taxes at the time. So we estimated on that property was $171,030. Also with the relocation, we estimated $100,000 for a relocation of Haas Towing, and $50,000 for the demolition of the building.
Okay, and what we have now is the 545 is for the relocation.
Correct.
So that's really the biggest delta.
Yes.
And who knew? the 255 versus the 171. And what's our demolition?
The bids came in at 39, a little over 39,000,
That's fine, 39, and we had
39,14.
expected 50. So I guess one of my question, what's that, 271, 3.25 versus the 800,000? So we have about $500,000 that we have to, I mean, we didn't put a $500,000 contingency in for that, so how did we come out with?
Well, with that, we still have unassigned contingencies in the full master plan out there. We have a little over $2 million that unassigned contingencies. We still have contingencies in the projects. Part of this is we won't be able to purchase some additional property we were looking at doing with the Park Market. We're going to stop there and not purchase that, and then use the rest of some of the contingencies to fill the gap that we needed for this.
Okay. Do you remember what you budgeted for Park Market?
198,000 and 100,000 for relocation.
Okay, so it's 300 out of the 5. My other question to you was the piece of the eminent domain, that doesn't fall in the footprint of the school, it must be surround, this is the other one on their D.
Yes, that's on 3rd Street. There's actually going to be 2 houses right next to each other that are eminent domain that we need to go through the process. If we look at it, eminent domain process could potentially take anywhere from 6 to 8 months. So at that time, we're going to need that property to start doing some of our work.
Which is my question, how is that going to impact if we have to continue with the eminent domain throughout? Because it can take more than 8 months even, can it?
It could.
Yeah.
So, and that part, where that's going to be at there, we have some walking path, we have the playground out there that we have to put there, along with the property where you have Kishwaukee, and the things to the west is where the green space, the football field, the diamond, whatever, the play area plus the bus.
So it's not impacting the building itself, but it.
Correct.
The
We've
surround.
already acquired everything within the footprint of the
Right.
building.
How many pieces do you have left? Only 2 more after this residential?
With the ones you approved tonight, this eminent domain, and there's one other eminent domain that the board has already approved, those are the last 2 pieces of property that we need to acquire.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Rollins.
As long as we're on this topic, what's the status on the Lincoln properties? I drive by there on a regular basis.
I believe they were supposed to start demolition this week. We
Okay.
went out there, we've had all the properties, we've acquired all the properties, we've abated all the properties. We had to put the 10-day notice out there for the demolition permits out there. So they were supposed to start this week, and actually, we're looking at replatting that whole area now, so.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
I know the contracts are signed because Laura had me sign them last week, so, to get the work done, so.
Yes.
Okay, so, but I see it every day, so, okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Schmidt? All right. Is there any other business or agenda items for the board tonight? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second? Second. Second by Mr. Dixon. All right. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 7:53.
Nice job.
I told my wife I wouldn't be done till 9.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I talked to Fred about.
It's still raining out. It was when I came in today.